Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Silent Paths, Wild Hearts. Episode 13. Chapter 78. Gonzalo POV. Hey there Speedy Gonzalo, you look like this. Where are you off to in such a hurry? Adrian called after me as I headed towards the fridge. I'm going to kill Theo, I mumbled at the nickname as I grabbed 2 bags of blood from the fridge. Dario is laughing in the back of my head. He thinks it's quite a clever nickname. 2 bags. What happened? Adrian's teasing mood turned to worry. She's fine. I sighed. I wasn't going to lie to him. He deserved to know. I sat down on the kitchen counter and motioned for him to sit. When I was done telling him what happened, I had to convince him to not run up to see her. She doesn't want to make a big fuss over it and insists that she's fine. Adrian finally relented and I got back up to head up to the suite. Gonzalo. Adrian stopped me. What I'm going to ask is in no way meant to pry into your privacy or overstep a boundary. Has she fed from you yet? You mean outside of the day she marked me? He nodded. No. Why? Feeding from your beloved, and in this case also your destined mate, it makes us stronger, in very much the same way being fully mated to their destined mates makes wolves stronger. Whatever is happening to her, she is going to need to be at her strongest when it comes to a head, he answered. Have you? I asked, not needing to finish the question. He nods, not often, and it makes you feel stronger. He nods again. Thanks, Adrian. Truly. I told him as I passed him. I then warred with Dario on how to best approach the subject with Cassie. We are not sure why she wouldn't try to drink from me if it made her stronger. Dario is sulking that maybe we don't taste right. He wants to be the one to ask her and I don't think that line of conversation will keep us out of the doghouse. Hey, are you okay? Cassie asked as I entered our room. Hey? Yes. I'm good. I said as I handed her the blood bags. I go sit on the couch while she pours the bag into her tumbler. I watch as she slowly sips and moans and I never thought I'd be jealous of a tumbler. She comes over and sits next to me as I flip through the channels. What time are we heading over to Merrill? She asks as she cuddles up to me. I put my arm around her and brought her close, inhaling her wonderful scent. The truth was, I was falling asleep. I hadn't slept much after I woke up to her bleeding all over the bed. I was scared it would happen again. I was trying to trust that the moon goddess hadn't given me back the love of my life as my mate just to take her away from me through something she did herself, but seeing her covered in blood and not waking up was my worst nightmare. For a few agonizing moments, I thought I was losing her for good this time. Lalo, she nudges me and I wake up. 7, I said, startled. Her worried look softened. Why don't you sleep for a bit and I'll come and get you when it's time? No, we have a meeting with Helios before then, I said and shook my head to shoo away the sleep. I'll go ask him the time and I'll come to get you. Did you get any sleep at all? She asked as she dragged me over to the bed and tucked me in. I thought we were going to talk to her about why she won't feed from us. Dario rumbled. Shut it. We've got time. I told him just before I passed out. I had another lucid dream and I was honestly sick of them. I couldn't figure out what I needed to find out from it. The entire thing just filled me with rage and a sense of helplessness. I walked up to Cassie as she was struggling against her restraints. I bent down to caress her even though I know I couldn't actually touch her. It won't do any good. But I'm just so tired of reliving her pain. I don't even jump when Selene shows up again. I just kept staring at the pain filling my mate. I look up as Selene kisses her forehead, tears in my eyes, not wanting to see her arch her back in pain. I looked at Selene's face as I heard Cassie's heart-wrenching scream. I wanted to scream at Selene. I wanted to know why she did this to Cassie. I felt so much rage until she looked up, tears in her eyes, and it was like we made eye contact. I didn't hear her voice, but one loud and confident thought popped into my head as we looked at each other. "You're the key to the lock." I woke up before I could make sense of the words. I looked around the room expecting to see Selene next to me. "We're the key." "The key to what? Where is the lock?" Dario asked. "Her seizures? I don't know. Was it even real? I wondered. It felt real, but who knows?" Dario grumbled. I grabbed my phone and headed out to find Cassie. I saw her walking towards the kitchen, talking with Nat about something when I got to the second-floor landing. "Let's use our speed." Dario wagged his tail. I eyed the stairs and figured it'd be a fun experiment. It was all going well until I got to the bend in the stairs. I didn't calculate how soon I needed to turn my body and I went crashing through the wooden banister and slid the rest of the way to my mate. I looked up at my startled mate and Luna. "I've fallen so hard for you, Muneka." I grinned up at her. Dario fell on his back laughing at my cheesy line, but Cassie broke into giggles, which made my embarrassment worth it. I stood up and looked at the broken wood. "I'll order the replacement, Luna." "Oh please. Just watching that was worth whatever it costs to replace it." "I hope we have that on video," she wheezed, tears rolling down her face already. "And oh goddess, that cheesy line. Fallen so hard for you." "Yeah, all right, it wasn't that funny," I said as I dusted myself off, but I couldn't help grinning at the two of them laughing loudly at me even as I felt my face heat up. "What's funny?" came Theo's question from the hall to the conference rooms. Behind him were Helios and Adrian. Helios eyed the broken staircase and what I'm sure was a level 4 blush on my face and his lips twitched. "Let's just get the meeting started," he said, turning around and pushing everyone back towards the conference rooms. "Testing your new powers, I see? Ask Iggy to fix it. He's a carpenter. I'm sure you can figure out some sort of payment he mind-linked." "Thanks for not telling the others," I answered. "Don't thank me. I'm sure one of the girls will tell the full story soon. I'm just getting you out of the hall where the entire packhouse will hear about it." He chuckled. "Maybe we should have practiced in private," Dario said as his tail ducked between his legs. "It's just family. We'll take the ribbing and keep making fun of Seb's tattoos again." I reminded him as I followed everyone to the meeting, making him sneeze with humor at the plan. We didn't get very far in our meeting and decided it was useless to try to plan anything when we weren't sure of how much information Meryl might know. We decided to reconvene after persuading him to talk. One thing was clear to everyone as we walked towards the holding cells. Meryl might not live past tonight. We walked in to find him sitting in a corner of the cell. He scuttled further from us like a dung beetle when he saw us. "Oh Meryl, aren't you happy to see us?" Cassie taunted. "You're all going to be dead. My bosses will never let me go. Do you think that Chip was there in case you took me? It was so I couldn't leave them. I'm too valuable." He spit out. "And yet, it's been more than a week since we took you, and still," Theo mocked. "Nary a peep." Cassie smiled, her fangs extended. Theo and Sebastian went inside the cell and grabbed a reluctant Meryl and dropped him on the chair. Helios walked into the cell as Marcus and Danny walked into the building. "All right, Meryl. The plan is simple. You have been holding out on us. You see Theo there? He knows when you're not answering us honestly. That hurts my feelings. I thought we were becoming friends," Helios explained with a wounded look on his face. "Since I'm a nice guy, we're going to try one more time. If you're holding back or answering dishonestly, my time with you will be over, and then Cassie will take over until she well pleases, to be honest." He suddenly loses the mocking look on his face and he becomes angry. "See, we know what you did to her. So, whatever she wants to do to you, if you hurt my feelings again, I will let her do it. Do we have an understanding?" Meryl looked over at us and nodded at Helios. Natalia wasn't here. She knew what was going to happen and she didn't want to heal him. She said he deserved to feel everything and wanted nothing to do with him. If he died, he died. She'd gone off with Mama Isabel to spend some time with Celeste. "Who recruited you?" Marcus asked. "Gavin Doyle, the CEO of CRA Pharmaceuticals. Before his son Shane took over," Meryl replied. "What was the objective of your research for him?" "To figure out how to extend life. To achieve immortality if possible." "Why did you need to experiment on Cassie for your research?" "She is already immortal," Helios asked. "I needed to test a theory." Helios' eyes glazed over and when they cleared, he sighed. "You hurt my feelings again, Meryl. I'm going to go cry now. Have fun with Cassie," he said, standing up. "No. Wait. I'm not lying." Meryl stood up but was restrained by Sebastian. "But you are holding back. So how about we give you some incentive to talk?" Helios replied as he opened the door for Cassie. Cassie walked in confidently, while I followed behind. "I'm here as her support." She had requested it during the meeting. "I know she might need me to pull her back. We still need information from this." "Hello, Meryl. Let's try that again, shall we?" she asked as Theo brought in a cart with tools she specifically requested and a few added surprises for us after she's done with him. "Tell me, why did you like playing with me so much?" She picked up a pair of pliers from the cart. "It seems she'll be starting with the classics." Kasha POV. I pick up the pair of pliers. "I can't start too aggressively. Meryl is not the demon I made him out to be in my head. He's an old man and his body will break easily. But there's more than one way to torture someone. I promised Helios I wouldn't kill him right away, but that doesn't mean we can't have a little fun. Tie him up," I tell Gonzalo. I need him here like I need blood to live. His presence stabilizes me. He stops the flashbacks from taking over. Gonzalo hands Meryl to Theo while he begins adjusting the table. It is a thing of beauty really. The table could be elevated, extended, and rotated to any degree, and several contraptions brought forward that can be used to restrain someone to the flat surface. It was a perfect interrogation room down to the drainage grates on the floor, as far as I could tell. Meryl struggled in his panic as Gonzalo grabbed him again and restrained him to the now 45-degree platform. Tell me, Meryl. Have you ever been tortured before, or am I popping that cherry? I said as I made a popping sound near his face. He flinched and then fisted his hand as I grabbed it where it's strapped to the metal bed. The old man was too weak to keep his fingers from me. Come now, Meryl, you remember how it worked. The more you struggle, the more I take. Did you know it wasn't even a very original form of torture? I had already been through having my nails removed a few times by the time I met you. Why do you think I never? I pull the first nail from his fingers and put a hand to my ear like I was listening to the best musical instrument known to man, screamed. I finished saying as I smiled down as I dropped the nail on the bowl. Now Meryl, because I love your voice so much, I'm going to have to take another before we start having a more pleasant, and hopefully truthful chat. I slowly pull out the next nail, just to make him sweat. Now tell me, what were you researching when you took me, and what did you inject me with? I asked. You bloodsucker! I'm not saying. Gonzalo growls at the disrespect but doesn't approach. He lets me continue my work. Growing a spine, are you? Let's see how useful it is against me now that I am not the one restrained. I take the rest of his nails from the left hand and move on to the right, letting him scream to his heart's content. How are we feeling now? I ask. He's panting and crying. The little baby. I barely even touched him. When he didn't answer, I unfurled his fingers and put my pliers on the thumb. Wait, Alta reamed as I pulled the thumbnail off. Oh sorry, I didn't hear you in time. I mocked. I put the pliers down and sat down on the chair next to him. Now let's chat just like we used to, hey old man. Why do I seem to be the only vampire that was experimented on? We've raided plenty of other labs and no one experimented on the vampires. They just studied their blood. I asked again. He looks genuinely confused and somewhat angry. There are other labs. I smile widely. Oh Meryl, you really thought you were special, didn't you? You thought you were irreplaceable? We've raided, what is the count now, Alpha, 5 or 6 other labs. I turned to Helios. He was the 7th, I think, and there's 2 more in Europe alone for us to pick apart. Helios looked like he was genuinely trying to remember. See, when we say we're not worried about your boss coming for you, it's because we know he's got more stuff on his plate than one old scientist. My Alpha not only killed his son, but we've dismantled more than just your small lab. And let me tell you, I got closer to him and patted his head. Yours has been the smallest lab to date. It didn't even have a guard tower. Ah! I covered my mouth with my hand and made a sad face. I stood up and headed over to the pliers and picked my nails with them. But now, we're getting off subject. Why was I experimented on? We spent years doing experiments on the shifters. Gavin's entire family was obsessed with finding a way of making them immortal. They knew about the white wolf and wanted to find a way to become like her. Nothing ever worked. We tried forcing a beloved mark, we tried to change their DNA and RNA so that they could become hybrid. We tried to mate them and we even tried in vitro fertilization to try to make a hybrid. They all died too quickly. There wasn't an iota of progress. No matter the hypothesis or what rules we thought the science should follow. We finally learned that vampires and werewolves were not compatible. You can't turn a werewolf into a vampire. They already live longer lives than humans, but not as long as vampires. So we shifted the focus from immortality to just extending life further. We tried so many different things. You're stalling again, Meryl, I said as I grabbed his hand again. He talks too much. No. Wait. I'm talking. I'm talking, he said in a panic. You want to know why you were used as an experiment and this is why. Manners, Meryl. Or I will teach you some. I warned. I had a theory. If we can't turn werewolves into vampires, why not try to turn vampires into werewolves? Vampires are already basically immortal, and if we could get them to fall under the Alpha command, it would almost be the same thing. If we could create a successful hybrid, it would open the door to breeding. My boss wasn't very happy. If my theory was correct, we could create hybrids, but it wouldn't help him or his family live longer at all. He stopped for a moment as if lost in his thoughts. Still, after more years of failure, he brought in a vampire so I could present my theory. The vampire wasn't very keen on the idea of having these new hybrids at the disposal of an alpha, and I was positive that my project would die before I ever got to test it. But 2 months later I got an email letting me know that I had the funding for the project, but I only had one chance. If the vampire in question didn't survive, then my experiment would be considered terminated. I requested a strong vampire blood sample to be provided so I could develop a formula. He stopped again briefly. Turning a human into a werewolf has proven to be a myth, but there was no recorded history of what happens when a wolf infects a vampire. A vampire turned hybrid by us wouldn't have a wolf spirit. They would only have the ability to change. They would be in full control, but still subject to the Alpha command. We could build an army not beholden to your precious goddess. He said distastefully. So then you kidnapped me. I tried to move the story along. No. This was years before we met, Princess. I requested blood samples from a strong vampire. Remember, I only had one chance to experiment on an actual vampire, so I needed the most likely subject to survive a change like what we were hoping for. He explained. It made sense, but then it begged the question. Whose blood did you receive? I asked. I don't know. He said. He's lying. Came Theo's voice from the other side of the cell. I sighed. You were doing so well, Meryl, old pal. I said before I removed the last 4 nails from his right hand without giving him a chance to breathe. You've run out of fingernails, Meryl. We're going to have to move on to the feet here. I said calmly as he continued to scream. Whose blood did you receive? You. I was talking. He roared. Manners, Meryl, I said as I pivoted the table upwards. I removed his shoes and made a face. God, your feet stink, I said before I put on a pair of gloves and removed the next nail. No, that won't do at all. I think the feet have to go. It's the only way to get rid of the goddess' awful stench. Don't you think so, Gonzalo? It's not like he's going anywhere soon. Gonzalo sneered. I put down the pliers and grabbed a pair of tree cutters. No, I think he's got cankles. This won't do at all. I put the tree cutters down and grabbed a small hatchet. I think this will do. Wait, wait. I'm sorry. I'll talk. He screamed as I held his foot still and raised the hatchet. It was the Queen. The Queen gave us some of her own blood. He screamed as I brought down the hatchet. I took his two littlest toes and watched him pass out from the impact. What a week! I sighed as I grabbed a large tongue depressor, opened the sealed silver nitrate container, and when I made sure Gonzalo was nowhere near, I pressed it to his toe stumps, cauterizing the wound and making the good doctor wake up screaming. I carefully cleaned up the area and resealed the container back tightly. I dropped all the dirty equipment back into a garbage bin I would dispose of personally and then turned to Theo while Meryl continued to cry. Was he telling the truth? When Theo nodded, I turned to Helios. Can we bring the Queen in? Kasia POV, she and Brayden are being escorted here already, Helios answered. Oh, stop crying already, Meryl. It was only 2 toes. I snapped, don't make me gag you. His cries reduced to whimpers, for which I was thankful. The man was too loud. This place wasn't that big. I will have to research some acoustic methods of reducing his screams from bouncing all over the place. Then this place will be the perfect interrogation room. A few minutes later, I heard the door open. Iggy, Thomas, and Dan brought my sister and Brayden in. What is the meaning of this? 2 days in a row now I'm being manhandled. I thought I was a guest. Carissa huffs and stands up to her full height before she takes in the doctor, the blood, and I see her zero in on the loose toes in the metal bowl. Her face takes on an unnatural color and she turns around and throws up on the floor. God, what is that smell? She gags before she heaves again. Feet fungus, I answer, or silver nitrate burning flesh. I shrug. Why am I here, Cassie? She asks once she's able to stop vomiting. I should feel guilty, but all I want are answers. I'm sick of feeling like a yo-yo. Each time, she points in another direction and then something points me right back to her. I want answers, Carissa. Do you know who this man is? I asked. No. Should I? She said while eyeing Meryl with a look of disgust on her face. He said he met you and you gave him a vial of your blood to test on. I was rapidly losing my patience. I would never deal with such a slimy-looking man, she huffed, then smelled the air. He doesn't even smell like a vampire, she said before she gagged slightly again and covered her nose. I looked to Theo, who nodded at me that she was telling the truth. Meryl, is this the Queen you met? I asked him as I turned the table upright. What? No. That's not the Queen, he said in confusion. Can you describe her? Gonzalo asked. Tall with raven black hair. A beauty, he said dreamily. I rolled my eyes. And? Gonzalo prompted. That's all I remember. It was almost 30 years ago, Wolf. I only met her once. He grumbled at him before looking at me to see if I would punish him. Wait, is this her? Carissa takes off the pendant she's wearing and walks toward the cell. She stops and gags and instead hands it to me before she runs back to her corner to throw up again. I look into the locket and while I'm not surprised to see a picture of Mom and Dad in there, what surprises me is the picture of us when we were younger on the other side. I lock away those emotions as I notice Gonzalo looking at me curiously and shove the picture of my parents under Meryl's nose. Is this her? I asked him. Meryl nods. I was going to ask another question but Meryl threw up and then passed out. Gonzalo came up and flipped the table over so he was facing down and he didn't choke on his vomit. Theo grabbed a hose from the outside and sprayed the floor. Despite getting wet, Meryl didn't wake. I think he's just in shock. We'll let him sleep it off and come back a few hours before sunrise. Helios said. We left the doctor sleeping. I gave Carissa back her locket. How many times do I have to prove to you that I am not behind this madness, Cassie? She reproached. As many as it takes, Carissa, I respond before I leave her behind. I'm going to go for a workout. You want to come with me? I asked Gonzalo. I have some things to take care of. Why don't I look for you after? He said, coming up to kiss me. I turned around and walked towards the training grounds. I needed a good spar. I see Isidro talking with 5 other guys around. Perfect. Hey guys, what do you say? 5-on-1? I ask and smile at their excited grins. About 20 minutes later, I was huffing right along with them on the floor, trying to catch my breath. I had more than a few bruises and I had to reset my nose. Cassie. You're a beast. I heard Jonah puffing from somewhere on my right. And you're getting better. That right hook caught me by surprise. You didn't used to have that much strength. Have you been hitting the weights? I wondered. Yes, he said, and I could hear the pride in my compliment in his words. Are you guys done or are you up for one more, princess? I hear from a distance. Something about the voice still tickles my brain. I know I've heard it before. I know he's the one from the phone call, but I can't place it. I push myself up on my elbows and look for him. Brayden is over at the edge of the training grounds. He's got a smirk on his lips and that also tickles my brain. I feel like I know him, but I have never met him before now. Give me 5 minutes and I'll be good to go. I plop back down to the ground and concentrate on letting my body heal. Perhaps it wasn't the best idea to go 5-on-1 with warrior wolves if I had known I would have a chance to have a go at Brayden. My guys were getting good and I had been looking forward to a nice hot bath before heading back to Gonzalo. I feel someone hovering above me, so I opened my eyes. Adrian is looking at me with a bit of worry in his eyes. Are you sure you want to do this, Cassie? He's got to have some skill if he's protecting the queen, and it looks like Isidro and the guys landed some good hits on you. It's only a spar, Adrian. We're not fighting to the death here. I mumble. Are you sure? You've humiliated the man twice already. He sounds genuinely worried and I wonder if I look worse than I feel. Maybe I should shower before looking for Gonzalo. I'm sure, I answered. If you get killed, I'm not the one telling Gonzalo. He huffed as he helped me up. I dusted myself off and removed my shirt. When fighting with mated wolves, but I had a feeling Brayden wasn't going to be as fair. I dusted my pants off and looked over. As suspected, Brayden had already removed his shirt and was warming up at the side. Cassie, perhaps put the shirt back on. Beta Gonzalo won't like his woman when he's not here. Isidro called out. He had a worried look on his face as he looked out at the gathered crowd. I looked around and noticed what he was worried about. Not all these guys were mated and I was feeling a little bit like Red Riding Hood on my way to Grandma's house. They should know better. I'm not sparring with a handicap, I told him. He sighed and nodded. He'd gotten a lot nicer to me of late and I was thankful for that, but almost laughed as I heard him growling at the rest. That's our beta female. Keep your eyes in check. I loosened my muscles a little more before Brayden approached me. Should I wait until you don't look like you've already gotten beat? Don't want you to claim you were already tired. He asked again with a smirk. It's just a friendly spar, is it not? I smiled sweetly. He grinned and took a step back. Sure. The moment Isidro gave the signal. He's on me. He's fast, I gave him that. It made me briefly wonder how I got the drop on him both times. I didn't have a lot of time to think about it as his punches come fast and I'm not dodging all of them. His punch combination was familiar to me. There was only one man I know that would throw that punch-kick combination. Did he study under Miles too? Or was this just a coincidence? Suddenly, his punch slipped through my guard and I could feel a rib break. I gritted my teeth as I grabbed onto my side. He grinned at me again and this time it all clicked. I saw the resemblance and suddenly the voice in my head finds a face. It was his voice and that was his grin. Whenever he outsmarted me with a new move. That first time I beat him in a fight. When I finally proved I was not to be messed with. He may not look like him but I'm almost sure it's him. I started to breathe heavily as the memories started flooding my brain and emotion threatened to take over. I have to be sure though. I attacked, going for nothing difficult to let him think I'm tiring out. I left myself open and then he went for the move I knew he would. He kicked high and I caught him without much difficulty. He tried to complete the kick with the other leg but he ended up hanging upside down as I held both of his legs. Confirming my suspicions, he bent upwards, then swung down for momentum, and once I let him go, wrapped his legs around my neck and arm in a triangle choke hold expecting me to pass out. Give up, princess, before you go for a nap. He huffed but now I am enraged. You would know about giving up, wouldn't you? You let him die alone. I raged before I stood up with him still holding onto me. I twist before I take him down with me as I flipped backward. He falls to the ground and shakes it off before he stood up but I no longer wanted to spar. I wanted to kill him. I scuttled up to my feet and launched at him. My arm went around his neck and I slammed his face down to the ground as hard as I could manage. He didn't get up right away, dazed from his face hitting the hard ground. I flipped him over and straddled him. I started punching him. You let him die alone. He was an old man. He didn't deserve it. Do you know what I would have given to be allowed to be by his side when he took his last breath? I yelled as I pummeled his face to the ground. The tears fell from my eyes. They mixed with my blood and fell onto his face, but I didn't stop. I had begged to be allowed in when they told me he was dying, but they refused me. No matter who I threatened, no matter what I offered, they wouldn't let me in, and Miles Lee had died alone, with nothing but nurses and doctors that didn't give him. Two arms grabbed me and pulled me off him, and though I could feel the sparks surround me, my anger and grief had a hold of me. Adrian appeared at my side and tried to calm me down, but it wasn't working. Gonzalo dropped us to the ground without breaking his hold around me. He whispered soothing words in my ear, but all it does is drop me further into my grief. I begged. I tried to force my way, and I wasn't able to get to him. He could have been there for him, and he chose to stay away. The one thing he should have done for the father that saved him from a life in prison. You could have been there, and you chose to be a coward. I screamed. Gonzalo POV, I could feel her pain and rage as clear as if it were mine. I don't know who she was talking about, but I didn't have time to dive into any of that. She hadn't noticed it yet, but her eyes and her ears were bleeding. I needed to calm her down. Cassie, please come back to me, I whispered. I tried to kiss her neck, but she's just struggled out of my grip. I could feel the pain of her broken rib under all of her grief and rage, and didn't want to hurt her, but Cassie was a better fighter than I was, and while I was proud of it to no end, right now, I couldn't afford for her to escape me. I wouldn't be able to pin her again if I did. She slowly stopped struggling, but then my heart broke as her rage was replaced by her pain, and sobs racked her whole body. Dario, I need your help. If we can't calm her down, she's going to have a seizure. We need to reach her. I begged him. He was the one that had been able to push through her grief last time. Let me forward. I can reach her. He said calmly, though I could tell half of him just wanted to rip to shreds whoever was the reason for her grief. Brayden triggered it, we knew, but she didn't know Brayden for very long. I allowed him to take over, and he slowly kissed her temple as he started to soothe her. She looked up at his dark eyes, her violet eyes filled with so much pain and rimmed in blood. He let him die alone, Dario. His own father. I would have given anything to be by his side, and he had the choice and let Miles die thinking he was forgotten. She cried as she hung on to us. I begged Carissa. I even begged Armand. They wouldn't help. All I wanted was to tell him what he meant to me. He knew Cassie. How could he not when you love so completely? Dario said quietly as tears gathered in his eyes and fell. Talk to me, mate. You don't have to carry this alone. Let me share your grief. You have both of us with you. To love you, to mourn with you. To live for you. I could see Cassie was trying, but it seemed like the words would get stuck in her throat. Dario kissed her again and spoke, trying to quiet her grief with another poem. She was the one that loved but never asked for love. The girl who thought she could. She was the one that listened but never spoke. The one that hurt, but refused to hurt. The one that helped, but never asked for help. The girl who thought she could. She met a boy and loved him, but asked for nothing in return. Because she didn't know she could. Until he showed her that he knew she could. And still, he loved her. And still, he helped her. So she learned to love and asked for love. She listened and asked to be heard. She helped, and learned to ask for help. The girl who thought she could proved she could, but he didn't ask her to. And she tried to love herself, the same way he loved her. "Let us love you, Cassie," he whispered, and finally she hugged him back with all her force as she buried her head in his neck. "Get him out of here," I linked Isidro as Dario stepped back to let me handle the rest. As a wolf, he felt her pain even more now that she'd marked us, and he was howling and whimpering in the back as the torrent of emotions slowly stilled within her. He had done what he needed, now it was his turn to mourn along with her grief and for me to take care of business. "He was like a father to me," she whispered as she continued to cry. Adrian passed me her shirt and I started cleaning the blood off her face. "What is happening to her? That doesn't look like the result of a spar. Why are her eyes bleeding?" Carissa asked. She had stopped following Isidro as he carried an unconscious Brayden towards the pack house. "Not now, Carissa," I said as Cassie buried her face into my chest again. "Then when? She won't talk to me. I want to know what you did to her. I sent her here to be safe." She snarled at me. "Are you kidding me right now?" I growled as I stood up with her in my arms. "She's had this problem for 23 years. If you were a better sister or any kind of sister, you would have noticed." "What do you mean?" She never said anything. Carissa looked confused at my words, her eyes never leaving Cassie. "And did you ask? Did you ever in the last 200 years think of anyone but yourself for long enough to be a sister?" I growled. How dare why she started, but I was done. This wasn't the time. "I dare. Remember, you are a guest here, Carissa. Nothing more. You're not the queen of the wolves. You want my respect? Show me you deserve it. This isn't the time to try to catch up. Go look after your guard. I will look after my mate." I walked inside with Cassie in my arms. "We'll have to wait on the interview tomorrow." I linked Helios. "Got it. I've been informed of what happened. Is she okay?" Helios responded right away. "No, we're here if you need us," Helios said without asking more. I carried Cassie up to our suite and laid her down on the bed. We were both covered in dirt and blood, but that wasn't important right now. She was shaking and I didn't know if it was from crying or her seizures. I took off her shoes and pulled mine off before I pulled the covers over us. "I'm getting everything dirty," she hiccuped. "That is the least important thing right now," I whispered as I cocooned her in my arms. I wanted her to know she was safe and that no one here would ever make her feel the grief she felt moments ago again. I could feel her crying silently, just hanging on to me. Her shaking subsided and I felt her relax. I thought she had gone to sleep as I rubbed the small of her back, but then she stood up suddenly. I tightened my arms around her. I feared for a second that she was having another episode before she turned to look down at me. "I want to show you something," she said. I let her go and she got up to get her laptop. She walked back and sat next to me. "Adrian scanned these all for me a while ago. It was a good thing too. I probably would have lost them by now. I keep them in my email to make sure I can access them anywhere." She seemed to find what she was looking for and her swollen red-tinted eyes finally smiled again. I sat up and pulled her onto my lap, placing my chin on her shoulders so I could see her laptop with her. She pulled up a couple of saved emails and brought up a couple of really old pictures from the 1940s. Is this him? I asked. She nodded, a small smile on her face as the tears gathered and fell again, but I could feel through the bond this was just the stirring of memories. There was no rage or overwhelming grief in her tears. I looked at the black and white photo. The man looks old, but he had a smile on his face as Cassie is kissing him on his cheek. He doesn't remind me of Brayden, but I had already assumed that he wouldn't look like Miles if Cassie hadn't recognized him that first day. Tell me about him, I asked her, kissing her shoulder softly. Should tell her not to spar without a shirt. Dario mumbled possessively now that she was calmer. She does as she wants. The rest know better than to look at her like that. We may not be able to take her in a spar, but we can take the rest. We can protect our mate without trying to control her. I told him. Okay, but then I want no argument. When I put them in their place, I rolled my eyes at him and didn't answer back. We spent the next hour talking about her mentor, and as she spoke I understood her grief a little better. This man had been there for her when she had all but been abandoned by everyone around her. He was the reason she managed to survive. She lived. He became her father when her father betrayed her. We should shower and get ready to go back to Meryl, she said as we cuddled on the bed. We're waiting until tonight, I told her as I pulled her to me more. What, why? She wanted to know. I shrugged and she narrowed her eyes at me. Because of me. I shrugged again and pulled her closer when she tried to get up. It's okay, Cassie, he's not going anywhere. He may not, but we're running out of time. We're not wasting a day on it. We need answers, Lalo. Please. I sighed and took in the look of determination on her face. Okay. I'll tell Helios, I said, and she launched herself on top of me. I growled into her kiss, I'm not telling Helios anything if you keep rubbing your body on mine like that, I said. She stopped kissing me and grinned at me. Maybe a quickie in the shower, I growled again as she ran into the restroom, chucking her clothes on the way. Helios. Cassie is fine to keep interrogating Meryl today. Can we meet in 20 minutes? Are you sure? Yes, I answered. Okay, I'll let the others know, he said, and at that moment, I saw Cassie shaking at me from the door. Her mischievous look on her face made Dario push forward. Actually, make it 40, I said roughly and shut off the mind link as Helios started laughing at me. I removed my clothing and ran into the bathroom. Dangerous to shake you like that, mate, Dario growled as he pushed me back again. I decided to let them have their fun. He's been cock-blocked enough. Dario POV. Finally, Gonzalo stops fighting me and lets me have my time with our mate. That jiggle by the bathroom door was too much for me to resist. That sweet in her folds playing peekaboo as she bent over to wiggle those perfect cheeks was mine to worship, even if this was going to be quick. She was already in the shower when I made it in. She turned around and studied my eyes, likely noticing that they had gone from Gonzalo's brown to my black. Dario? She asked. I nodded and moved my head to the side, wanting to see what her reaction would be, paying attention to her feelings through the bond. Would she prefer Gonzalo instead of me tonight? Stop it, she loves you, Gonzalo said in the back of our mind. I ignored him, waiting for her instead. I felt her surprise but not disappointment. Then suddenly, I felt her joy as her smile grew and dazzled me. About time. I was beginning to feel you were neglecting me, she said with a smirk. Goddess, what this woman did to me with just a smile, I thought as I felt my heart beating faster. Can't have you thinking that now, can we? I said as I pushed her against the shower glass. She shook her head at me with an innocent smile on her face, spraying me with water as she did. Dangerous creature she is. I smirked and licked her face, making her squeal. Dario, that's gross. She giggled before she yelped in surprise as I hoisted her legs on my shoulders and stood up. Grab onto the top if you need, I told her just as I shoved my face into her folds. She was already glistening for me. I growled at the taste of her. It had no comparison. She moaned from above me as one hand dug into my hair and I heard her head hit the glass wall. I chuckled and she tried to roll her hips forward. I felt the primal need to mark her for all to see that she belongs to us and only us. I licked her marking spot but forced myself from her neck, kissing her shoulder as I got my breathing under control. I remind myself that I trust my sister to know what's right for my mate. I know what awaits us on the full moon, but Kara swore me to secrecy. It's been keeping the secret and I'm still mad she spilled the beans to me. I trust Gonzalo completely and I'm lucky to have him as my human. This has been torture. I hated lying to him. I hated waiting. I hated secrets, but it needed to be done. When the time is right, he will need to know what to do. I will tell him everything. For now, all I can do is ask the right questions, so his mind starts making the connections we need and it is not a shock to our system when we finally get to the full moon. No matter what is going to be happening around the full moon, the only thing that matters is that we need to be near our mate so we can mark her. But first, a very important question comes to mind as I clear my head and pull myself out of my guarded thoughts. Why won't you feed from us? Do we not taste right? I asked. Dude, that wasn't the plan. Gonzalo growled. She will need her full strength on the full moon. That's less than a week from now. There's no point in beating around the bush. She needs to get stronger. I tell him. Cassie looks into my eyes and at first, I see confusion before her face goes soft and she kisses my nose. Is that what you've been worried about? Dario. You are my ambrosia. You are my drug. I am already addicted to you. I could get addicted to your blood. Even just the taste of you when I marked you makes the blood I consume daily taste like ash compared to you. You, my wonderful mate, are the most precious thing in my life and I will not let you be used as a meal. You mean more to me than a base necessity. You hold my love, my hopes, my life in your hands. You are my home. My heart stopped beating as she spoke, then I became overwhelmed with love for her. But it will make you stronger, I said weakly as I kissed her chest. I couldn't quite articulate the love I and Gonzalo were feeling at this moment. Your love makes me stronger. It gives me the will to fight. That is all I need. You by my side. As long as you continue to love me, no one will be able to touch me. I will burn the whole world to keep you by my side. She pulls my face up and kisses me sweetly, making the moisture in my eyes fall. When she pulls back, she smiles and wipes the tears from my face. Come, let's shower now. We have a date with Meryl. She smiled wickedly. I love you, "Woman," I told her as I gently pulled out of her and let her down. I let Gonzalo forward and he turned her around and kissed her hard before they continue the shower and head down to the holding cells. It's time to finish this. Meryl needs to die so we have one less thing to worry about. Cassie POV. Welcome back to the world of the living, Meryl, I said as I entered the cell with my little cart. I noticed whoever had guarded him put his shoes back on and sprayed some sort of scented deodorizer. I tapped his shoe and he screamed. "Oh, I'm sorry, is that the one that lost the little piglets?" He wisely didn't answer, or maybe it was the reverberating pain in his foot making him speechless. Not that it mattered. "Now, we were having a conversation before you so rudely went to sleep," I said and watched as he tried to glare at me between pants. I picked up a little knife. There's zero chance I'm going back to the feet. I'm trying to punish him, not me. What did you do with my mother's blood, you? I'm not telling you anything anymore. You're going to kill me anyway. You can go not knowing what's happening to you. I twirled the blade in my hands and shrugged, catching him off guard. Fine by me. I like hearing you scream. I smiled and tore his pants leg up to the hip on both sides. What are you doing? Meryl asked nervously. Don't worry. I'll leave your virtue intact. No one wants to see that. I shuddered. We're just going to do a little. I tapped the tip of the knife to my chin to think of an appropriate phrase. Landscaping? I think it is one of the preferred phrases. Or is it manscaping? Can it be called manscaping if I'm not touching his things? I motioned to his groin in disgust. I don't see why not. That's what they call it when men shave their legs too, Adrian answered from the other side of the cell. Perfect. Manscaping it is. I smiled at Meryl sweetly. I put on gloves because this man hasn't really showered in a week, and frankly, I don't want to touch him and the mess I'm about to make. Last chance, Meryl. He spat. I nodded happily at his response and tightened the leg down more firmly. I took the tip of the knife and dug it a couple of centimeters into his skin until it reached the muscle. I scored the knife up his leg as his screams increased. I did the same a couple of inches to the right and then slowly wiggled the tip of the knife under his skin. Once I had loosened enough skin at the bottom of the to get a grip on the pierce of flesh, I flashed Meryl a smile. Last chance, old friend. He was breathing hard but still looked angry. The man hadn't figured out what I was doing yet. When he said nothing, I grabbed a hold of the piece of skin and pulled. Meryl's screams bounced off the walls before they stopped altogether. I looked up and sighed. He had passed out already. I dropped the long piece of flesh and when I turned back, I saw Theo getting ready with the hose. Just hang on. Let him wake up a little faster than that, I said as I put my knife on the other side of the bare muscle and ran it down again to the ankle. I wiggled the knife again and felt him twitch. Old Meryl was about to wake up. I grabbed onto the piece of flesh and ripped it off, smiling as his screams filled my ears again. Ah, good morning, sweetheart. I winked at him as I disposed of the second piece of flesh. Are you still not ready to talk? I asked as I watched him calm down a little. His torn pant legs were saturated with blood. You think you're so tough, don't you, little dove? He said calmly a few minutes later, his brain having released enough endorphins to help him manage the pain. My step faltered as the memories threatened to flood my brain. That stupid name he liked to call me. It still disgusted me to no end. His smile widened as if he knew what it did to me. You feel big torturing a man tied down? Why don't you untie me and we'll see who's got the power here? Gonzalo growled, but Theo and Adrian laughed. I thought about it a little and decided he was right. It was time for him to know who had the power here. Untie him, Gonzalo, then leave the cell please, I asked him. Cassie, I don't think that's a great idea, Gonzalo said. See little dove, even your wolfie mate knows who's got more power, he mocked. If you kill him, we won't get any answers, he said, ignoring Meryl. I won't kill him, I promised him, even though I wasn't sure I'd keep that promise. Still, I begged him with my eyes. Gonzalo sighed as he pulled a hand over his face and nodded. He removed all the restraints and left, leaving old Meryl on the slat as I picked my knife up waiting for him to get himself up. He was struggling. Don't tell me you can't even get up by yourself, I asked. He winced a few times as he slid his feet to stand. I simply picked my nails while I waited. Am I supposed to attack someone with a weapon? He sneered as he stood, almost slipping on the pool of blood on the floor. I rolled my eyes and put the knife back on the tray and pushed it into the corner. He eyed it while I walked to the other end. I extended my hand and beckoned him to me. Well, come on. What's your excuse now? I promise I won't touch your leg or foot. Show me what you got, old man. His reaction was what I expected. He dove for the tray, grabbing a knife. I heard the others growl, but I held up a hand. Really, what happened to showing me your true power? How disappointing. You think I'm going to go one-on-one with a vampire? I know you can turn your fingernails into claws. Your teeth get longer to bite. I gave him a disgusted look. You think I want to bite you? I'll catch something. Gross. I pushed myself off the wall and began walking toward him. I let my eyes flash to scare him. You think a simple knife will stop me? You think it will do anything to me? I elongated my nails and dug them into my palm, letting the blood flow, and he watched as it closed faster than he'd ever seen. It's something I noticed while training after I marked Gonzalo. I have his healing speed on top of mine. I walked forward again and he scampered backward like a beetle. You think I even need to touch you to hurt you? I said as I let my power out and compelled him. I drew it back enough so he could react to what was happening without him being able to oppose me. Kneel, I hissed. I felt him trying to fight off my light compel, but he was so weak-minded. He knelt in front of me like a good little puppy. Carve a K on your arm, I ordered. His face changed as a look of horror overtook his features and his right hand began to carve his left arm. His screams grabbed blood as he tried to say no. None of that. Don't scream, I told him. I could still hear him scream in my head as he fought me weakly. I tilted my head and looked at him again. How about you remove another strip of flesh? Just keep going where I started, I instructed. His pleadings in my head got louder, but I said nothing. I just waited. He couldn't resist my command. I saw as he began to strip pieces of his skin off with a shaky knife, often digging into the muscle. Suddenly, the pungent smell of bowl release hit my nose. Cassie POV stop. Seriously? I said as I tried not to gag. My sense of smell had also been heightened since I marked Gonzalo. I removed the compel and he didn't even try to stand. He just whimpered and begged for mercy. I was honestly disgusted at this point. This wasn't even worth my time. Look at you. You're covered in tears, begging for mercy when I haven't even warmed up. You really are a poor excuse for a human being trying to play God for decades to soothe your pathetic ego. You're an even worse villain. All these years, remembering the pain of the serum coursing through my veins. I thought you broke me. I thought I was weak because I was captured and used. I thought I was broken by a monster, but looking at you now, I see how small you are. You're not a monster, Meryl. You're the bully that tries to kill the ants with a magnifying glass because no one wanted to play with you at recess. You're not worth the rage I've had for you for over 20 years. You're not even worth killing. I walked over to the tray of tools, feeling like something had been lifted inside me. Meryl had nothing for me. No answers I wanted, no vengeance worth my soul. I picked up a pair of shears. All it's going to take to break you and make sure you're never able to play God anymore is a few. I opened the shears simple. I closed the pliers to make sure that he heard the sharpened blades scrape against each other. Quick snips I finished and grabbed his hands, careful not to step in his pool of blood and sliding down his legs. I removed each finger to the knuckle until all that was left were stumps. I dropped him back on the ground and walked to the cell door. I'm done with you, Meryl. After I leave here tonight, you will be nothing more than a footnote in my past. You don't matter. You're not anything. It's time for you to get to know what an Aztec jaguar warrior can do to his enemies. I've heard they can be quite ingenious. I walked over to a chair and sat while Theo and Sebastian strapped him back onto the table, while Gonzalo hosed him down. Want to grab some air? We'll come back in a bit. Adrian asked. I nodded and walked over to Gonzalo. I kissed him and he nodded at me. Understanding that I needed a moment outside. We walked over to the same bench Gonzalo and I had sat on just a couple of days ago. Feel better? He asked after a few minutes. I feel free, I said. It was the best way to describe what I was feeling at that moment. I thought I would feel sick to my stomach for the things I did to him, but I didn't. He deserved it. Not only for me, but for every person he has made suffer and killed in the decades he's been working for the rogue. I no longer cared if we got answers. Something in my subconscious kept telling me it didn't matter what he said. It will all change after the full moon. It was time Meryl died so we could all move on to the actual monsters of this story. He was just a distraction. When do you start therapy? Adrian asked. After the full moon, I answered him. We had already scheduled them with the psychologist. Same, he said, and I looked at him. He shrugged when he noticed my stare. I figured it wouldn't hurt after my little number the other night. Time to work on our baggage because, baby, we are home. He sighed happily as he put his arm around me and we just sat there in silence for a while. We heard a roar from behind as the door opened and closed behind us. We turned and saw Elias coming out at a sprint. He looked and found us and ran forward faster. Cassie, you need to come with me," he said quickly. "Did he say anything?" I asked him. "Nothing useful, but he insinuated, he looked uncomfortable. He insinuated he raped you, and Gonzalo lost control. Helios is trying to calm him down but he's going to tear him apart," he said, and I understood the urgency. Meryl wants to die and he's going to get it. I won't let him die like that. He doesn't deserve that honor, I said as I used my speed to reach the holding cells again. I walked into pure chaos. Helios and Sebastian are holding Gonzalo back. Meryl is still strapped to the table but it's currently sideways on the floor. I pushed into the cell and stopped in front of Gonzalo. His eyes were black and brown. They were both present and they were annoyed. "Lalo, Dario. Look at me." I put my face into his field of vision but it was as if he was looking through me. "Let me go." They growled at Helios. "He didn't touch me that way. Lalo, please. Listen to me. He's lying to you. He beat me, he tortured me, he experimented on me, but he never touched me that way." I cooed. I kissed his face softly until he started to calm down slightly and then tried again. "He never touched me. He wants you to kill him. He is lying to you. He deserves to die. If Gonzalo doesn't do it, I will," Dario panted before he kissed me and receded. "He needs to die." Gonzalo was still raging. "Yes, but not on his terms." "On ours," I said softly. Helios and Sebastian let him go and he grabbed me and pulled me into his arms. He buried his face into my neck and inhaled deeply. I let him breathe his fill until I felt him relax a bit more. "I'm sorry," he finally said as he hugged me tighter. "We're sorry. It's okay." I hugged him back. "Alpha, can we have a quick conversation outside?" I asked. I was done with this. "Of course," Helios said as Elias entered the cell to help Sebastian right Meryl's bed. I grabbed Gonzalo's hand and took him with me. Once we were outside, I grabbed him, pulled him in and put my hands on his face, and kissed him hard. He responded by wrapping his strong arms around me and kissing me back, plunging his tongue into my mouth and growling appreciatively. I pulled back and he whimpered, making me chuckle. I turned to look at Helios, who had his back to us to give us some privacy. "You can turn around now, Alpha," I said, only slightly embarrassed that I'd done it in front of an audience. Helios turned around and tried to hide a smile but failed miserably. "What did you want to discuss?" he asked. "I think it's time to stop playing with Meryl. He doesn't know anything. He's useless to us," I said simply. "What about your seizures?" Gonzalo asked. "He has no clue. Even if he tells us what's in the serum, it won't give us answers. I want to be done with this. I want to move on from it. We have bigger fish to fry." "Gavin, Armand, and my mother," I explained. Helios and Gonzalo think for a bit before Gonzalo sighs and puts his arms around me again. "If that's what you want, I will support this. But I want to have the last moment with him first. I don't want you to be the one to kill him." "But I don't want you to kill him," I insisted. "No, it needs to be me." He shook his head at me. "Guys," Helios tried to cut in. I don't want you to deal with my problem. I can do it. I can handle it, I told him. Guys, Helios tries again. I'm your mate. It's our prob, guys. Helios yells. We both stop and look at Helios. I started blushing, realizing we were squabbling like an old married couple. Neither of you needs to kill him. I've some Jimpy. You can each choose the body part you like the most and it will take care of the rest. Gonzalo's eyes lit up at the thought, but I was confused. What's Jimpy? I'll go get it. You explain. Helios said before he jumped away. Gonzalo looks at me and grins. You're going to get a kick out of this. Gonzalo POV Cassie has decided she's done with Meryl and agreed to let me administer the Jimpy. I could feel the relief and lightness that her decision brought her. It was like she was letting go of all the hate and fears she'd had towards him. I was glad, but I still had a bone to pick with him. We believed Cassie that he hadn't raped her, but that still didn't stop the fact that he tortured and experimented on my mate. I was surprised Dario had given in to her request to end his life and believed that he had nothing that would help with the seizures. I was beginning to suspect he knew more than he was telling. Why can't I just respect my mate's wishes? He responded to my suspicions a little too quickly. Because you're bad at lying and a bad actor. I answered. I resent that. I've never even lied to you, Dario answered indignantly. Exactly. That means you don't realize how bad you are at it. I countered. Humph was all he said. And let's not forget that you are not actually denying that you know something you're not telling me. You're just trying to deflect. I continued. He rolls his eyes and flicks his tail, but to prove my point, he doesn't deny it. I sighed. I know Selini's rules can't be broken, but it sucks to not be in the loop. I don't like having something this important kept from me. Trust our sister. He finally said. Wait, are you saying you're one of her siblings and not just one of her siblings' wolves? I asked with growing fascination. His ears went down and he blocked me lightly as I started to feel him. He's hiding more than I thought and I know it's all connected to the full moon. Why he needed to lie to me about who he is though, I am not sure. I chose to trust him and Selini. She hadn't let us down so far. Lalo, are you okay? Helios is back. Cassie pulled me out of my thoughts and it's only then that I realized Helios was standing in front of me with a tin jar. Is that all we have? I asked. No. I have one more jar after this one. Feel free to use it all. I'll send for more soon. He said as he handed me the jar. I turned to Cassie, you ready for this? She nodded at me and we went back into the cells together. I'll talk, Meryl said right away as he noticed me coming in alone. We're no longer interested. It's just you and me now, nothing you say will stop what's about to happen. I shook my little tin jar at him. He looked confused and terrified. Good. If I manage to make him feel a tenth of what he did to Cassie, I will be satisfied. Wait, before you kill me. I need to know. Did it work? Meryl said, looking at Cassie. Did what work? Cassie asked, confused. The serum. Can you shift? You can shift, can't you? Show me please. Meryl pleaded. Cassie smiled then, and it was not a nice smile. Goddess, she was hot. Oh, you want to know if your life's work paid off? She asked. When Meryl nodded, she dropped her face back and laughed. I guess you'll never know. Have fun, she said as she sat down and nodded at me to continue. I set up the cart right next to his head and cleared the top off. Turn off the fans. Just in case. I ordered Theo, who nodded and went over to switch off the ventilation system. I put on a pair of animal handling gloves with Kevlar reinforced leather and a leather apron. I didn't want any of this on me. Tell me, Meryl. Do you know who we are? I asked him. A bunch of dogs. He said, trying to sound angry, but there was no masking the fear in his voice. Close, I suppose, but I'm going to tell you a secret. We were not born werewolves. Did you know that? None of us here were born werewolves. In a way, we are what you were trying to do with Cassie. Non-wolves that live forever turned into wolves. Isn't that funny? You get to see what it looks like to succeed, and you're not the one that did it. I mocked. We've seen empires rise and fall. We've seen things you couldn't even imagine, and then, we became better. More. Do you know who Helios is? I pointed over to him. Meryl just shook his head. His current fear was somewhat forgotten as his curiosity got the best of him. His original name is Huitzilopochtli. He's the Aztec god of war and Sunday. We are his jaguar warriors. This entire pack is his people and his legacy. Lies, he said. I turned to Helios, who rolled his eyes and summoned his Xihocoatl. You see his serpent staff? He can give you a little shock too if you're still doubting him. I mocked. Meryl shook his head quite fast at my suggestion. Okay, so now that you know who we are, did you know that most of us were born mortal? We were raised by our Aztec parents, I said as I fiddled with the tin can. Did you know what our parents did to discipline us? They used these agave fronds. I stopped and considered. I really hope you know what those look like because I don't have a sample on me. I almost laughed when he nodded. Good. So they used these agave fronds and would slap them on our bodies or tie them up against a given body part as a punishment. The sharp edges would embed into your body and leave marks. A reminder, for the next time you wanted to misbehave. I motioned to a few scars on my arm. I was a good boy, so I never got punished much, but Theo over there, well, let's just say he has more than a few scars from it on his back to this day. Hey! So does Seb. He has them worse. Theo countered, making the rest of them chuckle. Don't tell them that. No one has seen them. They can see yours. Sebastian responded. It's not my fault your mother only hit you, Theo argued. Theo, Sebastian growled. And I thought we argued like an old married couple, Cassie laughed. Well, they do have over 180 years on us, love. I winked. Gonzalo, the prisoner, Helios reminded me. Right. I turned back to Meryl. We don't have any agave fronds, unfortunately. But we do have this. I opened the container and slowly shook out the contents. Do you know what Jimpy trees are? No? Excellent, I'll tell you," I said, somewhat giddy for the next part. I love a good teaching moment. Gympie is an Australian tree that is also known as the stinging tree. Their leaves, stems, and fruit are covered in these tiny silica needles. When pricked, these little hairs on the leaves and stems here, I brought it closer to his face, release some nasty neurotoxins into your system. They say it feels like being burned by acid and electrocuted at the same time. They say you get some very bizarre sensations, crawling, shooting, and tingling pains, and a deep aching that feels like you are being slammed between two bricks. I bring the leaf very close to his face and laugh as he recoils from me. Scientists believe this tree has evolved much like a spider's venom. Ever get bitten by a venomous spider, Meryl? I have. That stung for days. These little things here have been magically spelled to not wither, so they retain every drop of toxin they have. Anyways, I slapped the first leaf onto his uncovered muscle without another word. It took his body a second to react to the toxin and his screams began. I slapped another leaf on his other leg. This won't kill him yet, but he might pass out and I need him to know something first. I get up close and personal to his face to make sure he hears me. I've spent days waking up in the same lucid nightmare. Hearing Cassie screaming in pain as you inserted that serum into her veins. Watching the love of my life writhe as it burned through her body. I want you to know, Meryl, that after this, I won't have that same dream anymore. I got closer to him as I picked up the rest of the leaves. I whispered in his ears, all I'll see is your body twitching as the venom sends signals to your brain of the most excruciating pain known to man. But I'll smile in my dreams knowing that while my Cassie lived, you won't get that same fortune. You're going to die in here, with me watching as you beg for death while slipping in and out of consciousness while I'm sipping a latte on the other side of those bars. I stand and place one leaf on his neck, before I tell him coldly, you were not remarkable. You didn't change the world. You are nothing and you will die as even less. There won't be a marker somewhere for you for people to mourn you or take flowers. You will be burnt and your ashes flushed down the toilet where you belong. I place the other two leaves on his face and walk out of the cell after removing my protective layers and sit on one of the chairs as we listen to him scream until he passes out for the first time. I doubt he'll be alive before night falls again. Shall we head up for dinner then? Helios asked. The others nod and begin to file out. I'm staying here for a while. Can you have someone bring me a sandwich? I asked them. Are you sure? Theo asked and I nodded. Gonzalo POV, I didn't know you were having nightmares about Celeste's vision, Cassie said once everyone left. I sighed and patted my lap. She walked over and sat on it. I wrapped my arms around her small waist. I didn't want to worry you. There's not much we can do about nightmares. I told her as I kissed her shoulder. Just, don't shut me out again. Okay. She said softly. Never. In just a few days, you'll have my mark and you'll be able to feel me as deeply as I feel you. I told her as I let one of my hands walk up to her neck, making her shiver. You shouldn't stay here though, I told her as I watched Meryl twitching while unconscious. Neither should you. If you're going to insist, then I'm staying with you. She said stubbornly. What if he dies halfway through the day? I asked her weakly. It's called thick winter clothes, Gonzalo. Don't try to get rid of me. She rolled her eyes at me. We stayed in the room for about 2 more hours and, in true Meryl fashion, he died before dawn even rose. Cassie and I went to sleep after giving instructions to have him burnt and flushed. As expected, I had a dreamless sleep and woke up refreshed. No incidents, no nightmares. I was almost afraid to leave the bed. I didn't want to break the peace I felt in this small moment. If I didn't talk to anyone, maybe wouldn't hit the fan again. I could use a day off. It would just be me and Cassie. There were only 3 more nights until the full moon. If I could just keep us in bed for that long, we could face whatever we needed to with energy and full strength. I'm game for that. Came Dario's response from the back of my head as he stretched. Shut it, you're still keeping from me. Cassie and I are the only ones in the dark here, I reminded him. Dario whimpered and retreated. I sighed. Wait, come back. I'm sorry. I know you don't like keeping to yourself. I know there are rules. I am just frustrated. I am too. Do you think I don't want to tell you everything? I told Kara I didn't want to know and she just kept yapping at me. I love her but she didn't have to reach out again just to tell me. That woman doesn't know how to keep secrets. She just rambles on and on until she feels better about stuff and then she sleeps, and I'm left stressing over. She talks about. He pouted, making me laugh. Kara does tend to talk a lot. It must be something about knowing she's the favorite of all the wolves so she can't get into trouble. Not to mention, Selene is also really fond of Celeste. She wouldn't punish either of them. So what can you tell me? I asked. We need to be near Cassie on the full moon. We cannot miss marking her at the moon's peak. No matter what happens. He responds. That's not ominous at all. I sighed. He sneezed in agreement. Maybe we will stay here until then? That's the ideal plan, but we don't have that kind of luck. I have a feeling things won't be as easy as that, or Kara wouldn't have given me the warning. He reasoned. I said, mostly to myself. I say after this is done, we go on vacation for a good month. I want to spend time with our mate without all this drama and interruption. Just somewhere where it's just us and nothing else. Will her until she has a pup inside her belly, and I'll even hunt for our food so we don't have to meet anyone else. He wagged his tail at the thought. You got yourself a deal. I promised him, looking down at the flat belly under my arms. I would love to see her pregnant with our son or daughter. I scooted back slightly so I wouldn't wake her up with my heart on and inhaled her scent more to calm my nerves. What else? What do you mean? He tilts his head in confusion. You let it slip last night that you're one of Selene's siblings. That has to mean you have powers you haven't shown me. I reminded him. He sighs. It's not that. My powers won't be released until our mating is complete. Who are you then? I tried again. I am Quetzalcoatl. One of the few that my sister managed to fully merge with my wolf spirit before her essence was depleted, so I retained my memories. He sighs. I was the 3rd sibling you and Helios killed. I didn't know how to respond to that. But before I could think of something to say, he started talking again. You don't need to apologize if that's what you were going to do. I know everything. I don't hold it against anyone. War has many victims. Oftentimes, both sides are innocent. You are a good man, Gonzalo, so let's not dwell on it. He insisted, and I was once again grateful to Selene for giving me such an amazing wolf spirit. Do Helios and Ezekiel know? I wondered. Ezekiel knows. We decided not to tell Helios until he's able to fully forgive himself. He said pointedly. So what's your power now? I asked him. Our power, he corrected, was power over the wind and rain. I started, but he interrupted. I don't know how our gift will manifest this time. I used to be able to create torrential rain and hurricanes. We were very important, you know. He said as he puffed out his chest. I know, buddy. I did my research, I said regretfully. Right. He said awkwardly. Well, we're a big deal, so it's only fitting that we got a princess for a mate. He finished proudly. I rolled my eyes but smiled. Well, if it's going to hit the fan, I'm staying in bed until someone calls for us. He nodded enthusiastically, and we pulled Cassie up against our chest and fell back asleep. We woke up to a knock a few hours later. I felt Cassie pull on my arms as she tried to get up, but I pulled her further into my body. Come on, someone's at the door, she said, struggling. Go away. I grumbled loudly towards the door. Lalo, she hissed. We need both of you downstairs. Helios has been trying to mind link you for about 3 hours now. Elias Link made me groan, and I let go of Cassie, who sprinted for the door. It's almost midnight. What are you guys still doing in bed? You don't even look like you were being ravished. Adrian sauntered in, handing Cassie a tumbler. Did it occur to you that maybe we were just tired and wanted to sleep for a whole day? I mumbled. Oh, is Dad grumpy today? Adrian said as he sat on the end of the bed. I was pretty happy until I was woken up, actually, I said, sitting up. Elias handed me a sandwich and coffee. Thank you, I told him as my stomach growled at the smell of the coffee and food. What does Helios need? Cassie's mom is harassing Carissa about a meeting. She's been trying to FaceTime Carissa and asking for a new phone number and where she is so she can be close. She also keeps insisting to Carissa that they should find Cassie and get her to help, Elias answers. She's coming here? Cassie asked. She told Carissa that she wanted to pick her up and then fly down here to get you. Some about family should stick together and help each other through difficult times. Adrian rolled his eyes. We can't let her come here. She'll put the pack in danger. Cassie started panicking. Hey, it's okay. We can defend ourselves if she does, I said. If she's working with Armand, they have a whole army of assassins at his disposal, she said as she paced. I set my food aside and grabbed her and pulled her to my lap. We're not an ordinary pack. Have a little faith in us, Cassie, I said softly. It is not a matter of faith, Lalo. I care for the pack. I don't want to see anyone hurt because of me, she said worriedly. Then don't think about it as someone is going to be hurt because of you. Think of it as the fact that the pack loves you, Cassie, and is willing to protect you. Cassie looked at Elias and Adrian, who were both nodding their heads. She buried her head in my neck and I waited patiently for her to calm down. Okay then, let's go make a plan, she said as she stood up a minute later, a fierce look on her face. That's my assassin. I smiled as I got up to get a change of clothes. Tell Helios we'll be down in 10, I told Adrian as he was pulled out of the room by Elias. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.